Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Governance and Priorities meeting for December 5th. The first meeting in December. Can you believe that? A short time ago, we were just starting January and talking about how cold it was. And today we're talking about the end of 2022 and how cold it is. It seems like we're like in a little loop that goes back and forth. We all sit there and complain about the weather each and every time that we see each other. So maybe we can build a dome over Stony Plain and we can control that. Just thrown out there, just in case, if somebody wants to make a motion. All right, members of council, you have agenda before you. Deputy Mayor, if I can ask you to make the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Town Council adopt the December 5th, 2022 Governance and Priorities meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you. Administration, anything to add?
Your Worship, nothing to add, but it would appear that the BMX Association is not yet present, so you may wish to move to the RCMP presentation prior to that, and if they show, we can do that when they do arrive.
Okay, thank you for that. Members of council, call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Move on to number 3, which is public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody sent anything in?
Your Worship, no one's registered.
Okay, thank you. And we have a gallery full of people. So does anybody in the gallery like to make any comments or address council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, which is presentations. As mentioned by our town manager of the Stony Plain BMX Association, the rider's not currently here right now, so we'll wait and we will kind of skip this and come back to it when they do show up. So move number 5 is business items. We have the update from the RCMP detachment. So welcome, Inspector, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I know. Yes, so if you can speak directly into the mic, and since this is your first presentation as the inspector, if you can just give a little bit of history about yourself, and then you can go ahead with your presentation.
You bet. So I'm Inspector Kevin McGilvery. I've just got promoted here within Stony Plain Detachment or Parkland Detachment just about 5 weeks ago. So I think most of you probably know I've been here for about 5 years as the Ops NCO and then the Ops Support NCO, but certainly happy to extend my time here as the OIC of Parkland. So just had, I wanted to go over some of the stats that we've got, and then I've got a couple of items that I'd like to talk to you about. But the stats that I provided were until the end of October of this year, and they're compared to the last 5 years. So not a lot of remarkable things in there. Things are fairly steady within the town of Stony Plain in the last, up till the end of October. You can see that first full category is the persons crimes. And I always preface it too with the fact that the pandemic really wreaked havoc on some of our stats. So, over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see things fluctuate a little bit, but already this year that we're starting to see them sort of level out to the levels that we saw pre-pandemic. So you may see some differences over the last couple of years. But the first section there is all of our persons crimes. Fairly steady. If anything, I would say they've been coming down a little bit over the last 5 years, but fairly consistent over the last 4 years, with this year being 278 persons crimes. So that's anything from your common assault to a sex assault to criminal harassment and that type of things. Those are the main ones. We would consider those are some of our highest priority calls, anything that has to do with persons crimes. We rate those up fairly high. So happy to see those staying fairly consistent. There is some good news in the next section there in the property crime. You'll see especially the break and enters, that top line of the property crime section. From 5 years ago at 85 break and enters that year up till this point. This year we've had 41, so that's about cut in half, and even lower than the last few years as well. So those are some good numbers. Vehicle thefts are down a bit, but the other significant one you'll see is theft under $5,000. That one's down significantly, especially from 4 and 5 years ago. I think those ones I would suggest that they are, if you're getting things like the car hoppers, that are going from car to car. Sometimes you'll get a group of people that are doing that in a community, and I know that's what was happening 4 and 5 years ago. We had a group of people that were consistently doing car hopping. Not so much over the last couple of years, knock on wood, but you can see how many people, like if they were to go out for an evening and hop car to car, we might get 15 or 20 break and enters into those cars or thefts from those cars in one night, so they really skew the stats. But happy to see those come down significantly as well, which the combination between the B&Es and the theft under really dropped our property crime rates down over the last 5 years, which is good to see. Again, on the second page, unless there's any questions, things are fairly consistent. One thing I find interesting with the town of Stony Plain, typically the rest of our detachment area and a lot of detachments across the province have seen a real increase in mental health complaints over the last couple of years. But Stony Plain is actually down even from the last 2 years. We're down, last year was 307 up to this point, and this year is 242. So good to see those staying stable and even decreasing some. There's a collision section on this second page. I think it's your page 11. You know, collisions are typically weather dependent too. If we have a good winter, we don't see near the collision rate, but they're staying fairly consistent throughout the last 5 years. The one thing I wanted to point out on this page, you'll see the one that says roadside suspensions, alcohol and drugs. And we weren't, there's some changes in legislation over the last year or so, so that's why there's no data from the previous ones, but they were all criminal code offenses up to that point. But now with new legislation over the last couple of years, we go provincial on the majority of those unless they're impaired causing death or something like that. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit too once we're done talking about stats, just with our some of the stuff that we're doing with our impaired driving and that sort of thing. So any questions on any of the stats?
Thank you for that. Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Inspector. Just a question in regard to the theft under 5,000 that you mentioned. You know, it is showing a significant reduction percentage, particularly in the 5-year span. A lot of the feedback, though, that we're hearing from the community, that we've heard from the community in the past, is that they stopped reporting many of the minor things just based on the perceived lack of action or lack of result by doing so. And we obviously continue to encourage them to report anything and everything, because that's how we make sure that we're aware of any of the issues, so on and so forth. So do you feel that there is a portion of that percentage that is just simply people choosing not to report it because the value and the result of the report really to them isn't worth their time?
Yeah, it's a good point. I can say I'm in my 20th year, and 19 and 20 years ago, I heard the same things that, you know what, we're no longer reporting as they can't do anything anyway or whatever. Whether that's more or less now, I don't know, but I can say that that was happening 20 years ago too. But you're right. We always encourage people to report it, because say it is something as minor as a car hopper where they're stealing change out of the ashtray of the vehicle, and maybe we caught somebody 2 blocks away doing another one, and we might be able to trace it back to doing those ones as well. So we do encourage people to report all those. You know, it helps with our statistics to show areas of high crime in different communities and that. But you never know when, you know, somebody else was caught, and we might be able to link it back to that as well.
Sure, thank you. And then in addition to that, if I may, Your Worship. So I know as part of that, the RCMP put in the initiative for the online reporting, and theft under 5,000 is one of those things that's included in the online reporting. Have you seen an uptick in the use of that online reporting to make filing that complaint easier and then to allow you to continue to collect that data?
I haven't got the stats on how many people are using that. It's not as widely known as we'd like it to be. There's certainly some people utilizing it. Again, as I get on in the presentation here, I want to talk a little bit about our communications and how we're going to message some things out. But I think we can probably encourage more people to use the online reporting for sure.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Loyens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Inspector, can you just go over again, sorry, under the total persons, and it says mischief others, for the last year there's 112, which is an increase of 19% over the last year. what exactly is mischief other, and why would we be seeing an increase?
Yeah, so they've got it now divided between the mischief other and mischief to other or damage to property. So there's different types of mischief that can be happening under the criminal realm. So I'm not sure why they split it into the two. You can see in 2018 they weren't split. So there's 348 under the one. This year between the two, there's 248. So I think it's the split between those two. It could be as simple as, a mischief. It could be breaking the window of somebody's car or different things like that. I'd have to look at that and see what ones fall under each one specifically, but they did divide those over the last 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Inspector, congratulations on your promotion. I loved hearing, I've been promoted to Parkland, and I went, oh, great. Never mind, you were already here. I was curious about the roadside suspensions. Alcohol took a sharp step up, although it's only 23. It jumped up, but the roadside suspensions for drugs flatlined. Is that because it's hard to tell the difference? And it was easier to put under alcohol for quicker punishment or removal of them from their vehicles, or how do you explain that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. About a year ago, they changed the legislation in Alberta. Up to that point, we could only go criminal code on impaired driving. Provinces like British Columbia, they've been doing provincial sanctions for a number of years, and the province of Alberta has just implemented that over the last year or so. So the majority of impaired driving that we do now will go through the provincial sanctions as opposed to criminal code, unless it's, like I say, impaired causing injury or impaired causing death or something like that. In regards to the drugs and alcohol, there's different, you've probably seen on the news over the last couple of years too, there has been some difficulties with impaired by drug investigations. They're getting to a bit more of a true science behind it now. And we've just actually, at Parkland Detachment, about a month and a half ago, sent 2 members to be trained in Vancouver on drug recognition. So they're drug recognition experts now. There's 58 across the province, and I'm happy to say 2 of them are at Parkland Detachment. So that includes Edmonton Police Service, Calgary Police Service, our 114 detachments, and all the other smaller municipal forces. So for us to have 2 out of the 58, we're fortunate to have that. And I can say that I'm not sure how many in Stony Plain themselves, but in our entire detachment area, they've processed 6 in the last month. So you'll see that impaired by drugs start to grow. Simply because we have the tools now to enforce that.
Thank you.
Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and congratulations, Inspector, as well.
Thank you.
Just because it's before the news right now, I believe it's Bill C-21, and looking at our stats, we have a number of offensive weapons, which is where I imagine that would be found in our community. I'm just curious if you could speak to what the effect on our community, if this bill passes, would have on our community.
I'm going to have to wait and see what all comes about with the bill. I can say that we have had some files relating to firearms within the community. We had one about 3 months ago where there was an individual in town making 3D printed guns. And so there was a search warrant executed there, and we had a number of specialty units out from the city to help us with that. And so I wouldn't say that weapons offenses are prominent in Stony Plain, but they certainly can happen, and that was a good example to show that It could be in a neighbor's house that they're making these things, right? As to speak to the bill itself, I don't know if I can speak to that at this point. We'll have to see what it comes of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for clear understanding before we let the inspector carry on? Just maybe a couple questions for the inspector. Based on the, what page is that? Page 11, I think? Yes, page 11 of our agenda package. In terms of this, the property motor vehicle damages, one says reportable, one says not non-reportable. Can you explain the differences just for your members of council and for the general public that are watching and trying to listen to understand what the difference between those two are?
Yeah, so that comes down to dollar value. Anything over $2,000 is considered a reportable collision, and anything under $2,000 is not a reportable collision.
Okay, that makes really easy once you explain it. So would that be easier just to put above 2,000 or under 2,000? Like same as property crimes, it's either above 5,000 or below 5,000?
Yeah, those are moving numbers. They sometimes change those. So it would, yeah, right now it's at $2,000. I could see them increasing that with the amount of cost to repair vehicles and that right now. So, but yeah, that's the threshold is $2,000.
Okay. And I have a second question regarding the theft over 5,000. You mentioned something about the theft under 5,000, but I also noticed that the theft over 5,000 has increased 100% from last year. Can you provide some commentary on that, please?
Yeah, so when you look at percentage-wise, yes, it's 100%, but it's increased from 8 to 16, so it's increased. We've had 8 extras this year. With the cost of some items in that too, a lot more things you might have stole this year are different than if you stole them 5 years ago. That price may have jumped over that $5,000. So a lot of things are valued a little higher now, so that could account for some of it. I don't know what 16 items were stolen that were over 5,000, but to go from 8 to 16, it doesn't show a real concern for us. It looks bad when you look at percentages because it is a 100% increase, but for the sake of eight files in 10 months, it doesn't jump out as a huge concern.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the previous page, I think there was an item called extortion, and I think it's gone up 168% since 2018, about 100% year over year. So again, is that a growing concern or trend in our community that we need to be worried about?
That is more of a scoring thing as well. What some of those are being scored as is some of the phone scams that are being called in. They should typically be scored as a fraud, but some of them are being scored as extortion. Our readers try to catch those, but they're not up to date every single day. So some of our stats that we print for these could be a couple of weeks off without being reviewed. So I would suggest that those are probably lower because some of those type of extortion files that they're scored as now will be changed to a fraud.
Okay. And in terms of, you just mentioned the scam calls, et cetera, is there definitely within every community that happens, especially during Christmas time, is there like an ability to ramp up communications or kind of social media presence saying, hey, this is happening so that the residents are more aware of these kind of calls? Yeah,
you bet. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about here shortly too is communication, but that's certainly one of the things that we can include in there. There is some stuff coming out divisionally and nationally about the phone scams. They are, everybody in this room has probably received them. I receive them weekly almost. It's a business for these folks that are the fraudsters because they attract some people into it. And I think, I think there is some messaging that can go out there that if, the CRA or there's scams out there that says it's the RCMP calling and you need to pay with these gift cards and that sort of thing. So the big thing is if you're paying by or asked to pay by gift cards, it's probably a scam. But we can certainly get some more messaging out there to some more localized folks when these things come out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for clarity? Go ahead, Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Probably well-deserved.
Oh, thank you.
Mine's related to the Total Drugs Cannabis Enforcement and the Total Federal Cannabis Act. Can you speak to the difference between the two and what correlates to the percentage of 200%?
So, yeah, the drug-related stuff is again, the stats are going to be skewed over the next little while with the legalization of cannabis over the last little while. So that has to do with, what type of drug it is. So with them legalizing cannabis, of course, our drug trafficking and stuff went way down because it's no longer, trafficking is still an offense, but simple possession and that sort of thing went way down because it's no longer an offense. Yeah, so it would depend how it's scored, if it's fentanyl, cocaine, cannabis, that sort of thing. But it'll take, they legalized cannabis, I think it was about 4 years ago, so it'll take another year or two to straighten out on here.
Thank you. Okay, I see no more questions for clarity and understanding, so go ahead with your next part of the presentation.
Okay, there was a couple of comments about communication and that sort of thing. Our K-Division has a RCMP Alberta Facebook page, but Parkland Detachment is getting one for ourselves as well. There's a couple other detachments in the province that have them, but we've made the effort through our communications department to get one specific to us. So we just had a couple of members trained here about 3 weeks ago, and they're just going through the process to getting the page set up. So I think it's a great way to get information out there and get it out quickly. We will, we'll be trying. We're certainly not going to get into debates with people on the comment section, but I think it's an opportunity to maybe right some wrong information that's out there on other talk groups. I think we all have to be aware that things that we see on different talk groups, you have to rate it to see the truth behind it. And so when we see mistruths out there, we'll try to correct them through ours by doing different releases. But we can also include things in there, about the phone scams and that sort of thing. So we don't want to put too much information out there where people are getting these things every day and say it's too much and get rid of them. But we do want to start out by getting 2 or 3 out a week and see what kind of coverage we get and see how many people we can get following us on those. So that's a good thing, I think, to get that up and running. We'll see about other social media platforms once we get to this, but it's a big step for us just to get onto Facebook. So happy to see that happening. I'm not sure if Inspector Loughlin had talked to you about body-worn cameras or not, but they are coming to the RCMP, and happy to announce that they're coming to Parkland as one of the first test sites. There's 3 test sites across Alberta and 5 across the country, 3 of them being in Alberta, 2 others on the East Coast, and Parkland Detachment's going to be one of the test groups. So they've done the pilot already in a number of different locations, and the company is supposed to be named here. It was supposed to be named last week. I haven't heard if they've done that through procurement yet, but we are supposed to have them in our hands by the start of February. So happy to say that our members will be wearing those, and I think it's there's a lot of benefits to it. I think it holds police more accountable. It helps us with public complaints, so we can expedite those. If we get a complaint about our members' conduct, we can simply, rather than seeing bits and pieces of ones that the public has turned over to us, we'll be able to hopefully see the whole recording from start to finish to see how things go. So we do have video in the car, but of course, if you're away from your vehicle and it's not within range, we may have the audio from it, but we don't always have the video. So hopefully with the with the body worn cameras, it'll help us with that. And then, yeah, the last one was just about the drug recognition experts, but I spoke to that earlier, so certainly open to any questions if anybody has any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, and appreciated the update on the 3 new initiatives that are going to be happening within the Parkland detachment. Definitely a Facebook page to get messages out there will be actually beneficial. As you know, a lot of people will fill in the gaps if the information is not there, and it's better to have accurate information than just having somebody to fill in the gaps because they heard something from somebody down the line. You said the body cameras are going to get started February?
Yeah, they're supposed to be here at the start of February.
Okay, you said it's a test site, so does that mean every member will have one, or is just a select few?
Every frontline member will have them. Yeah, so in February, I believe we're getting 68 of them here at Parkland. And then Grand Prairie and St. Paul are also test sites. But after the 1 month of testing, every member across the country will be getting them.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding and commentary to the inspector? Okay. Seeing none? Thank you for your presentation, and again, on behalf of council, congratulations on your appointment as the inspector.
Thank you.
Definitely looking at the stats, it looks like Stony Plain is a fairly safe community. We definitely appreciate the open relationship and conversations that we have through our staff to you, so that we have more of a community policing model and not a kind of a Ottawa-driven model. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Members of council, that finishes our business items. I think we need a motion to accept it. Is that correct? Okay. So Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Council accept the RCMP update report for information.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any debate or questions on the motion to accept for information? See none, call the question all in favor. And that is carried. Okay, back to administration. Have we been notified by the Stony Plain BMX Association if there's a miscommunication or a gap in the timing?
Your worship, at this time, I don't believe we've been contacted since the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. So it looks like we're going to be closing our agenda here pretty soon. So if we can reach back out and maybe schedule another time, or maybe it's just we just kind of mail out the certificates later. Okay. Members of council discussion. So we'll open the floor for members of council to provide input, ask questions, or just a general comment of what's happening. Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just my usual wondering how we get Range Road 12 looked after. As winter comes along again, it's back to being fairly icy at most of the time. There's multiple vehicles in the ditches. Not sure how we address that issue, but it gets to be worse and worse every year. And the hill that comes down to that to the train tracks. The train tracks has about a 1.5 foot jump in it, so if you slide down that hill, you come across and you pretty much lose the bottom of your vehicle, whether it's a car or a truck. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could address that issue somewhere along the way.
Okay, thank you. Administration, any comments, or you just provide input later?
Your Worship, through the Councillor Pletchko, I don't have anything specific on Range Road 12. I will have to follow back up on that specific road. I am familiar with the circumstances and the site layout. Understand that there are some operational considerations that the crews do have to consider along with other roads in the town. I'm not prepared really to speak to specifically the councillor's question right now, but I will be following up with an email on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hansard.
Your Worship, I was privileged to work with Bernadette McGill, with the Spruce Grove Connect Association at Tim Hortons on 44th Avenue last night. It's what a great time to do that, cookie baking. And we produced an awful lot of cookies, boxed them up and had them. I hope they sold out, all of them. It's a real privilege to be able to do some little piece of participation when there are so many great partners like the food bank, Parkland Food Bank, and the Kinets and the Kinsman, Stony Plain Kinsman, coming together. I spoke with Ed Burney today. He told me it looked like between the two organizations, the two communities, they'd be probably serving about 1,400 families equaling 4,000 people this winter. So that use that in your social media or whatever and encourage people to go buy a cookie and buy a dozen cookies and take them wherever you're going to go and give them away, because it certainly does support a wonderful event that happens when people in our communities feel cared for. Also, winter light up, I prefer to call it Christmas light up, was cold. So kudos to everybody who came out and to those who stayed. I didn't stay real long, enough to let people know I was there, and got real cold, so I went home and warmed up. But what a lovely thing to see the lights all over Stony Plain.
Thank you, Councilor Hansard. Councilor Loyens, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things for myself. I wanted to mention that the residents in Greybrier still have their formerly known 12 Streets of Christmas. It is now called Stony Plain Lane on December 10th from 4 to 9 p.m. And they will have hot chocolate and candy canes and Santa, as well as please bring a non-perishable item for the Parkland Food Bank, as well as on the same Saturday, December 10th, the Red Apple is having a Stuff a Sleigh event. So bringing toys out for the toy drive will be wonderful, and that is all.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, again, just want to highlight as well the Holiday Smile cookies, something unique that we've managed at our Kinsman group bring to Stony Plain for the last couple of years to help support that, as well as the Red Apple Toy Drive this Saturday that was highlighted. Also think a very important event that's occurring tomorrow evening is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee medal presentation here locally in the town of Stony Plain to some very deserving residents. So looking forward to attending that. That's all this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Laurie. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question here through to administration. We had resident in Chambers here a few weeks back who raised some concerns about accessibility specific to snow clearing and that sort of thing. From my understanding, the issues that were presented were addressed quite quickly, which is very appreciated, so thank you for that. But I have continued to receive messages and photos of accessible parking stalls that are inaccessible for people who are in a wheelchair or otherwise. And so I'm just looking maybe for a little bit of commentary on what we're doing as a community to ensure our roads are safe, our parking spots are clear, and that those who have issues around accessibility or needs around accessibility are safe to move in and about our community.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question. Just to address the first part, so our operations manager and supervisor did go review the sites that were outlined by the resident, and they are taking steps to see there's the immediate dealing with the issues that were brought forward, as you know, and as well as trying to better integrate how do we address these these pair ramp and interface areas where you have the snow clearing and the sidewalk clearing at the same time, making sure that we're making it as clear as possible. I will, to your other questions about areas where we have maybe there are some areas that aren't getting cleared as well as we need to, or as residents would like to see. I would encourage those complaints to come through to the Public Works Department. They tend to be quite responsive if there's areas that we need to pay more attention to, or if we need to spend a little bit more time on. I will add there's a lot of effort on our crews, as well as working with our contractors to make sure we are addressing those as quickly as we can and trying to take as much time in these more specialized areas as we can. However, there is always going to be a balance against your operational time that you spend trying to make it as clear as you can while being mindful of the rest of the network and moving on. So if there are areas that the residents are asking that maybe we could do better, we encourage them to be reported, and we'll definitely be following up with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate the commentary with that for sure, and certainly appreciate the work that our Public Works team does to keep our community moving. I think, obviously some of us have a little bit more mobility, and so I think the question this evening is just coming from a place of ensuring our residents who experience, maybe some additional challenges around mobility are able to move around the community just as the rest of us are. So thank you for sharing your thoughts there. This last weekend, we had the chance to recognize as a community International Day of Persons with Disabilities as well, and had the privilege of visiting the Stony Plain Public Library, who hosted the event, and just heard some tremendous stories of residents in the Tri-Region, or past residents of the Tri-Region, and some of the challenges that maybe they've faced or adversity they faced due to a disability. One particular story was a lady who became a quadriplegic later in life, and is climbing mountains and all sorts of things still. And just amazing to see, her passion for life, and being able to share that with us as residents. And so, to our team as a town that put that on, our tremendous gratitude for that. I think it's important that, we recognize and celebrate all of our residents, and I think sometimes that it's easy to overlook certain aspects of our community, and so it was a privilege to hear those stories. I know Spruce Grove did a similar event, had an opportunity to hear some of the stories there as well, and so just a really, really exciting day. From what I understand, this is the first year that we really put on an event, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that grows in future years. So to our staff team, thank you for that. And then finally, I think this has been said a couple times, but Smile cookies are out. I had a great chat with the Kinsman as well. I had the opportunity to decorate cookies with my wife. Girls 6 to 9 is the need right now. That's been shared with me. A huge need for gifts for girls in that 6 to 9 age group. So, businesses all over our community are collecting in support of the initiative. And so if you see one of those bins, please help out where you can. So thank you for that.
Thank you for bringing those forward, Deputy Mayor. Again, I just want to just kind of ask all our community members that are on Main Street or in some of the commercial corridors. Usually when we shovel the walk, we just shovel it to the edge of the sidewalk. So if you happen to notice that there is an accessible parking spot beside you, just push a little bit further out so that keeps that access and that ramp open. We tend just to do what we need to do, and we forget about, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, the ones that are a little bit less mobile. So if we can actually ask our business community to take that little extra time to shovel a little bit outside of those areas, and therefore that provides a little opportunity until our staff get there. I think our staff, will do what they can when the issues arise, but they can't go around and chase every spot to make sure it's cleared. So we ask the community to work with us to make sure that we can provide that level of service for our residents. Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think everybody hit on a lot of these already, so I'll just say thank you to administration and the town for putting on a wonderful Christmas light up. Even though it was cold and a little bit later, I think everybody still appreciated that. I do want to hit on snow clearing as well, and just maybe clear up some confusion for me. I was at the the Multicultural Center the other evening, speaking with some people there. In terms of the sidewalk, through you to administration, the sidewalk that intersects the property, is that a town responsibility, or would that be the Maltese responsibility?
Your Worship, through the Council Mayor, I'm trying to recall that myself, and rather than, I'd rather take that away and be sure and make sure I have the right answer for that one.
Okay. Oh, that's good then. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and just can follow up on that because I think one of the services that we provide for the Multicultural Center is, actually services in lieu of grants. I think there is a little agreement that we do a few things on the grounds, but I'm not too sure if that covers it. For example, we clear their parking lot. That's part of our grant process. But that's cleared at our schedule, not theirs. So when we're doing parking lots, that's when it gets done. So I'm not too sure if the sidewalk is part of that agreement or is part of the responsibility of the Multicultural Heritage Center. So thank you for clearing that up for us and send us an email a little bit later. Okay. Councilor?
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think last meeting I asked about the Christmas and festive banners that normally went up on Golf Course Road. I'm not too sure if we had any for Veterans Boulevard yet, but I did not receive a response.
I can answer. Your Worship, you had asked last at the meeting on the 28th, you were just clarify the question for me. You were asking about Christmas banners on the main street?
No, Christmas banners on Golf Course Road. Usually there was Christmas banners, then some of it got ripped and they became season's greetings, happy holidays banners, and I just haven't noticed them yet. So just asking, when are we putting them back up?
So my understanding is that we haven't purchased any new Christmas banners at this point in time, but I'll verify, we can certainly verify scheduling. I don't know if the general manager of Planning and Infrastructure has any information with regards to installation scheduling or anything that's been clarified as far as replacement banners or any of those, but we haven't, I'm not aware of any purchases of new Christmas banners for this year.
Right, yeah, definitely not new ones because it was not in the corporate plan, but for this year, but also I knew that we had old existing ones that we used to change back and forth, and I just have not noticed them go up yet.
We will clarify that and get back to you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. And a question from a couple of residents regarding the skating at Rotary Park. It's beautiful, it looks excellent. A couple of them mentioned, is it possible to get a fire pit out there over the skating season, which is similar to what they have at Central Park in City Spruce Grove, where they have an open fire pit there, which if people that are interested can bring their own wood and like it's not supplied by the city. So if we had an ability to leave a fire pit out there, if people that wanted to have that fire pit, they can use it if they bought their own wood.
Okay, sorry, just checking the mic there. Your Worship, unless one of the general managers wants to comment that something's in the works, I'm not aware that we were planning anything that way. I would expect, should we wish to do that, I would expect there'd be a few steps to look at anyway. I'm sure we would want our fire chief or fire services involved to a degree. There would probably be some question of insurance and liability that we would have to ask and have answered, would be my other expectation on that. But as I'm aware, I don't know that anything's been planned, so I'm just looking over. Anybody want to comment further?
Your Worship, just to supplement, certainly the one at City Spruce Grove is permanent. So we would certainly have to look at a permanent solution versus the fire rings we had for light up as an example. I think that would probably leave that site on the first weekend. So definitely something we can look at, but we'd have to look at a more permanent solution versus putting something out on a temporary basis, just for this security. And then as the CAO has indicated too, we'd probably likely call City Spruce Grove and just see what they've got in process, just to make sure that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed related to that.
Okay, definitely appreciate that commentary, and yes, definitely I had a lot of compliments about the fire pits that we had over at Christmas Light Up. Beautiful little containers, I guess, fire pits, and yes, they will definitely be gone the first night that it's out there, because I think a lot of people were like, hey, can I buy one of those? I'm like, oh, sorry, our staff made them. I don't think they're quite for sale, but if it was left unattended, I would hazard to guess that it would be walking away pretty quick. And yes, so please, I look forward to that email back to see what Spruce Grove is doing and how we can align a little bit better with that. Another thing about the Christmas light up, I had a lot of young families come to me and appreciate the fact that the Santa pictures were earlier this time instead of last year. I know it was a colder evening from our emails that we received from our staff that there was over 600 photos of Santa, the most that we've had over the last 10 years. So kudos to our staff for that planning. I think in the years past, we heard a lot of concerns from family members with smaller children that the photos of Santa were always after the light up, which light up happened at 8, and a lot of families were staying in line till 9:30 to get photos of Santa, and that was a little too long, and our staff heard that, so they made the adjustment to have photos from 7 to 8:15, and then we shut it off there, and then we had the light up at 8:30, and everyone was able to go home when they were able to. So definitely kudos to staff. There are a lot of good compliments for that. So look forward to an update during the fourth quarter report and some of the changes and improvements, and then how we can, again, move forward next year to make it even better. And with that, just a reminder that there are no buses for Parkland School Division tomorrow with the changes in weather. I believe it's dropping to below 30, and at that time, all scheduled buses will not be running. So if you have children that do rely on the bus, it's a snow day, you get to stay home, or as a parent, because you love your children, you're going to drive them to school. Yes, minus 40, thank you. Okay. With that, it is a short meeting today, so we'll adjourn and we'll get ready for the next meeting next week. Thank you.